There's a part of you that thinks, yeah, I still feel like I have something to do, or I didn't do something, or maybe just the Bond thing. Strength has always been a hallmark of James Brolin's demeanor and on-screen presence. However, he has now been completely rattled by something very personal. Fans are devastated by the news of his wife's terrible condition and are unsure of how the couple will handle this trying time together. They have been regarded as one of Hollywood's most enduring love tales for years, but their unbreakable bond is being put to the test right now. What might have led them to this emotional fork in the road? Come learn the reasons behind James Brolin's farewell following his wife's devastating illness. Behind the lights. James Brolin has been in the spotlight for decades, navigating red carpets and Hollywood sets with ease. However, medical bills are now a part of his and Barbra Streisand's everyday lives at home. He is juggling the growing expenses associated with his wife's medical care with his own health requirements. In turn, she is battling her own health issues and saving her energy for the things that really count. James's priorities have subtly changed, as those who have dealt with him have noted. There are less acting projects. It is uncommon to appear in public. He concentrates on being at home and in the moment. But it's important to take a step back before we examine this period of his life. There is more to James Brolin's biography than his union with one of the most renowned entertainers in the world. It's also about the youngster he used to be, the challenges he faced, and the changes that made him the man he is now, facing one of the most difficult periods of his life. The man who understood what it was like to be out of place and to be struggling for air before he ever achieved fame or wealth. And this is when his adventure really started. Craig Kenneth Brolin was born James Brolin in Westwood, Los Angeles, on July 18, 1940. Henry Brolin, his father, was a building contractor who took a rigorous, no-nonsense approach to his job. Young Craig was influenced by Henry's work ethic, even though his presence at home was frequently limited due to his work hours. Helen Sue, his mother, was a dedicated homemaker. She previously had aspirations of her own, but she put them aside to raise her family. As a warning that life frequently requires decisions before you're ready, those unsaid sacrifices lingered in the background. Craig's childhood was anything from carefree. Due to his acute asthma, he was unable to participate in sports and was cautious about dust from playgrounds. He stayed inside for extended periods of time, breathing through wheezes, and waited for the constriction in his chest to go away, while other boys sprinted across fields or climbed trees. Although the seclusion might have been debilitating, it cultivated a distinct kind of curiosity. He started constructing intricate model aeroplanes and learning how the various components fit together. He was also drawn to films because of their mechanics as much as their plots. As much of the narrative was conveyed by the camera's angles and lighting as by the players. That interest intensified. Additionally, by the time he was a teenager, he had a modest collection of filmmaking equipment that he had either scrounged from second-hand stores or received as presents from family. These became his play area. In order to practice, he would occasionally convince people to act out scenes while he experimented with lighting and frame. It seemed like two separate worlds at school. Craig appeared to be quiet, even reclusive, and cautious about attracting too much attention. But when he walked into Santa Monica City College, everything started to change. He saw a spark among those pursuing their own goals. When he transferred to the drama program at the University of California, Los Angeles, that spark turned into a flame. He learned there that being in front of an audience wasn't the only aspect of performance. It involved comprehending people, assuming their feelings, and giving a story a sense of realism. Once content to stay in the shadows, the boy was now learning to stand in the light. James Brolin's career started off with a series of little, nearly unmemorable roles, much like those of many performers of his time. He accepted every job he could find in the early 1960s, including walk-on parts in programs like Bus Stop. Although the exposure was limited and the remuneration was minimal, every set served as a classroom. Every position, no matter how short, served as a new opportunity to develop timing and camera presence. It wasn't glamorous, though. He was rejected multiple times, and callbacks, and there were weeks when he questioned whether he had made the wrong decision altogether. Acting courses vied for his meager income with rent and groceries, and there were moments when financial stress made giving up seem like the right thing to do. When he was chosen to play Dr. Stephen Kiley in the medical drama Marcus Welby, Maryland, in 1969, it was a game-changer for him. A youthful, idealistic doctor whose empathy was equal to his skill. He immediately struck a chord with viewers, and reviewers paid attention. Brolin won 2 Golden Globes and 1 Emmy throughout the 7-year span of the show. This served as a springboard for an actor who had previously been on the verge of quitting. Fame brought opportunities. He took on prominent parts in well-known enterprises during the 1970s. As the general manager of a palatial San Francisco business, he became the epitome of style and power in the hotel industry. He dabbled in science fiction with Westworld, competing with Yul Brynner on a concept that would eventually serve as the basis for a popular HBO series. He later became the star of Capricorn 1, the Amityville Horror, one of the most famous horror films of the time, and a suspenseful conspiracy thriller around a fictitious Mars landing. He demonstrated his ability to transition fluidly between drama, action, and suspense in each role, which showcased a distinct aspect of his repertoire. Brolin was more than just an actor. He started directing and producing as the years passed, gaining experience behind the camera and understanding the ins and outs of presenting a story. After his own early setbacks, he took seriously the opportunity to mentor up-and-coming talent and gain control over the projects he took on. Surprisingly, his significance remained constant over time. Through voice acting in Pixar's Lightyear and television blockbusters like Life in Pieces, where his comedic timing pleased viewers, Brolin expanded his fan base in the 2000s and 2010s. Although longevity in Hollywood is uncommon, he has had a career spanning over 60 years, with each new chapter contributing to his public persona. However, as the years went by, James Brolin's biography shifted from highlighting significant moments in his profession to focusing more on the life he was creating away from the spotlight. This raises the question of how he came to know Barbra Streisand, a purposeful and passionate existence. Born in Brooklyn, New York, on April 24, 1942, when the United States was still embroiled in the complexities of World War II, Barbra Jones Streisand's early years were characterized by a loss that would permanently alter her emotional terrain. Her father, Emanuel Streisand, passed away unexpectedly from complications of a seizure when she was only 15 months old. His absence left more than simply a vacant seat at the dinner table. He had been a well-respected high school teacher who valued culture and education. Diana, Barbra's mother, was thrust into the role of a single parent almost immediately, leaving a wound that would haunt her for the rest of her life and drive her to seek recognition and connection via her art. She was transformed by grief. Being practical turned become a survival strategy. However, softness was sacrificed in the process. Diana had a practical, almost businesslike attitude towards life, and although she made an effort to support the family, Barbra longed for warmth because of her emotional detachment. She believed Diana might be judgmental and unhelpful, quick to criticize rather than to acknowledge accomplishments. Even when Barbra became the kind of celebrity her mother could never have dreamed of, that connection would continue to be problematic. Diana remarried while Barbra was still a youngster. Louis Kind, her stepfather, moved in with the family, but they never got along. Their relationship lacked sincere devotion and occasionally caused more stress than it did solace. Home wasn't always a safe haven for Barbra. Rather, she frequently found herself using music and pretend play to escape into her mind. As a means of escaping the conflicts that brewed in private, the family's financial situation was minimal. There was only the everyday grind of getting by, with no glitz or extravagance. Little luxuries were uncommon, and clothing was worn until it frayed. Although Barbra's upbringing gave her a strong desire to succeed, it also contributed to the sense of alienation she carried throughout her youth. She was self-conscious and ferociously determined, because she recognized her distinctions, whether they were in her voice, appearance, or goals. Early on, music became her haven. She would push the limits of her own vocal range as a young kid by mimicking the voices of artists she adored. Despite having no professional training, she picked up the emotion, the language, and the technical control. She had a distinctive, rich, expressive, and wholly original sound by the time she was a teenager. She was not, however, the kind of artist who depended solely on a lovely voice. Once she started singing, it was hard to take your eyes off her because of her presence and intensity. She wasn't the most popular girl at school. She carried herself with a sense of destiny, even if she didn't belong to the easier social circles. Observant friends and professors saw that she possessed a unique quality, something unadulterated and captivating. Barbara's ambition more than made up for her lack of social position. She started having dreams about Broadway and a movie about being in front of people who would accept her for who she was rather than what she lacked. Early loss, complicated familial circumstances, and humble beginnings all contributed to the development of a tough yet sensitive personality. Her work and relationships were influenced by those early events, which made her believe that she had to battle for every chance. Decades later, when James Brolin finally entered her life, he would discover that beneath the international celebrity lay the Brooklyn girl who had spent her childhood trying to establish her place in the world. However, Barbara's journey to the summit would be equally impressive before they discovered one another. How did a Brooklyn girl who had little financial support and no business ties end up being one of the most well-known voices in the world? Barbara's career shot into orbit rather than really taking off. Her resolve to get out of Brooklyn's congested streets had solidified by the time she was a teenager. She started competing in talent shows all across New York, frequently wearing plain attire and without elaborate hairstyles. However, the room would get silent as soon as she opened her mouth to sing. She possessed the unique ability to create an intimate atmosphere even in a boisterous nightclub. Every performance seemed fresh because of the nuanced, emotive, and surprising quality of her voice. Her first jobs were at cabarets and small clubs, where patrons included regulars, music aficionados, and curious bystanders who had heard rumors of a young woman who could stop you cold. Professionals in the field quickly began to take notice. Attracted by tales of a voice that could handle huge, brassy showstoppers and ballads with equal skill, casting directors and producers started to arrive. Her Broadway debut in I Can Get It For You, Wholesale in 1962 was her real breakthrough. The highlight of the play was her portrayal of Miss Marmalstein, a quirky and witty secretary, despite the fact that she was only 19 years old. Critics soon started writing about the newcomer who could dominate the stage without conforming to the conventional mold of a Broadway beauty because audiences couldn't get enough of her. She was unavoidable because to her unique blend of humor, vulnerability, and singing skill, Funny Girl followed. Barbara played the part of Fanny Brice so well both on stage in 1964 and in the 1968 movie adaptation that it was difficult to distinguish the actor from the character. She delivered songs like People and Don't Rain on My Parade in ways that would become iconic, bringing Fanny's comedic timing and emotional depth to life. She became a legitimate Hollywood star after winning the Academy Award for Best Actress for the movie adaptation. From there, Barbara transitioned between song and film with ease, something that very few performers have done so successfully. While her cinematic career gave her more Oscars, Golden Globes, and critical praise, her records were regularly at the top of the charts and earned her more Grammy Awards. However, she wasn't satisfied with being merely a performer. She started to actively participate behind the scenes, directing and producing her own projects after having a significant impact on everything from costume selection to set design. It was at this point that her reputation as a perfectionist really took hold. Her demanding nature occasionally annoyed her coworkers, but it was always for a reason. She refused to accept anything less than what she felt was right since she firmly believed in her vision. She had a longer career than many of her contemporaries because of her creative control, which was uncommon for women in Hollywood at the time. Barbara was more than simply a celebrity by the time she met James Brolin in the late 1990s. She was a household name. Drive, ingenuity, and an unwavering pursuit of perfection had characterized her life. Her private life, however, had been much less certain despite all of her public victories. Continue to observe. There's more. A bond of devotion. Barbara Streisand and James Brolin first met in 1996, but not during the pandemonium of a movie set or at some glitzy Hollywood event. Mutual friends organized the blind date. Both had prior marriage experience, were successful, and were dubious of the notion of being set up. However, any hesitancy seemed to vanish as James showed up. Barbara later acknowledged that she was immediately drawn to his grounded, friendly demeanor. Her wit and unvarnished honesty also won James over. What might have been a tense evening swiftly turned into a lengthy discussion. The unexpected realization that night was that in spite of their widely disparate upbringings, they had deeper-seated ideals in common. Both were passionate about what they did, intensely protective of their personal lives, and favored hard effort above shortcuts. After that, their relationship developed at a slower rate than one might anticipate from two famous people. They gradually blended their lives together, taking their time, making certain that the structures they were constructing were viable and authentic. While Barbara encouraged James to take creative risks and seize new opportunities, friends saw that James provided Barbara with a sense of stability. They were married in a private ceremony at Barbara's Malibu mansion on July 1, 1998, 2 years later. Instead of an army of industry insiders, the wedding was attended by intimate friends and family. Their dedication to one another was the main focus, not the spectacle. James, who is usually known for his calm manner, was unable to conceal the delight in his face when Barbara went down the aisle with a bright smile. It was a union based on love and trust rather than the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. There were difficulties in life together. Finding a balance between their private and public lives was a constant struggle for both of them, due to their demanding occupations. While James took on film and television roles, including long-running parts that kept him occupied for months at a time, Barbara maintained performing, recording, and occasionally directing. Nevertheless, they managed to make it work, frequently taking time off to rest at home in between tasks. Their home was described by friends as a calm place where they enjoyed delicious food, laughter, and the occasional heated argument about politics or the arts. One of their marriage's distinguishing characteristics became their mutual support. James remained by Barbara's side throughout times of vocal strain and other health issues, making sure she got enough sleep, protecting her from needless stress, and even adopting minor lifestyle changes to aid in her recovery. James faced similar difficulties in his personal and professional life. In later life, Barbara was supportive. When the world appeared unconcerned, she was his champion, his sounding board, and his critic when he needed one. They were able to preserve a unique sense of teamwork throughout it all. They cared for each other's development and well-being. They spoke of each other with sincere admiration, even after decades of dating. Barbara's artistry and unwavering drive would be praised by James. However, she would give him credit for imparting a steady calmness that enabled her to ease down when needed. However, as the years passed, life started to throw them a fresh set of difficulties that put their closest ties to the test. In a field where partnerships frequently ebb and flow due to the constant pressure of media attention, James Brolin and Barbara Streisand were somewhat of an exception. They weren't the couple who gave the media attention and courted headlines all the time, with meticulously crafted peeks into their lives. Instead, their strategy, which was based on the notion that marriage ought to be a haven apart from the bustle of Hollywood, felt almost archaic. They gained the kind of respect that cannot be created because of their dedication. They were frequently cited by peers and fans as evidence that love could endure, even flourish in the entertainment industry. With their unwavering devotion, James and Barbara seemed to avoid the temptations that come with continual attention, competing egos, and clashing schedules that many celebrity couples have encountered. Known for their harshness, the tabloids hardly ever had any real scandal to report about. Although writers might conjecture about their professional paths or fashion choices, the core of their relationship was unaffected by public drama. That lack of scandal was a statement in and of itself, and became ingrained in their legend. They had their detractors. Because of her perfectionism, Barbara was occasionally the subject of disparaging depictions. In the shadow of her imposing celebrity, James sometimes felt like Mr. Streisand. However, neither seems prepared to allow the opinions of others to determine the conditions of their relationship. They presented a unified front at industry conventions. Their nonverbal cues to one another convey a lot without using words. Their combined impact went well beyond the cinema and stage. Prior to their meeting, both had lengthy histories of charitable work, which they combined to impact innumerable lives. They made contributions to everything from medical science to environmental conservation, from social justice campaigns to arts education. James frequently accompanied Barbara to charity galas or assisted her behind the scenes in planning fundraising events because of her enthusiasm for gender equality and health awareness. Similar to this, Barbara frequently contributed her voice, platform, or presence to help advance James's support of veterans and neighborhood initiatives. The legacy that the couple leaves behind is as much about their shared life as it is about their separate accomplishments. In Hollywood, the phrase power couple is frequently associated with professional partnerships, combined wealth, or red carpet appearances. Barbara and James completely changed that notion. They believed that stability, trust, and a common capacity to utilize influence for worthwhile goals were the sources of true power. It comes from overcoming personal setbacks without making every detail public, and from quietly rejoicing in their triumphs before announcing them to the world. Additionally, there has been a certain continuity to their story. The same characteristics that characterized their early relationship still exist decades after they first met. These attributes have enabled them to gracefully weather the highs and lows of life in the spotlight. Even today, as they confront what may be the most trying time in their life, the public's opinion of them is still characterized by respect for their resilience. Out of genuine care and affection that has grown over decades, fans pay close attention. Many people have followed them through their professional and personal milestones, including marriages and jobs, and they view this current fight as a human struggle between two individuals they have grown to care about. Celebrity couples rarely inspire the public and the industry to the same extent. However, Barbara and James have succeeded in doing just that. Their story illustrates both the resilience that results from creating a life based on common principles and the potential for love to endure in a field that is notorious for short-lived partnerships. Notoriety was never the basis for them. Notoriety was only a situation. The friendship they cultivated behind closed doors, away from the spotlight, was the true foundation. The picture of Barbara and James together, still holding hands after all these years, has significance that goes well beyond Hollywood mythology, especially as James now supports Barbara during her health battle. It relates to the reality they have always experienced. The role they play in each other's lives is the most significant part either of them has ever played. The end. What are your thoughts? Does the enduring relationship between Barbara Streisand and James Brolin after all these years demonstrate that love can indeed triumph over celebrity? Leave a comment below with your opinions. Hearing them would be wonderful. For more, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Additionally, click the next video that appears on your screen. You'll love it.